Okay, welcome back, everybody, after our little break. Those of you that recall where we were up to, we are on the first day of Rosh Chodesh. David Marks sent me a very interesting article from Rav Moshe Lichtenstein about 2 days Rosh Chodesh and 2 days Yom Tov. It's actually quite complicated. It's a lot more complicated than I thought it was. I don't think I'm going to go through all of the details in that. I think we will suffice it to say that it seems clear from our chapter that there were 2 days of Rosh Chodesh at that time, which is well before the time of the Sanhedrin examining witnesses. There were 2 days Rosh Chodesh on a monthly basis. In other words, every month. It wasn't like we have some days are 2 days and some day are 1 day. It seems, and in fact, what the Rav Moshe Lichtenstein brings our chapter here as one of the proofs for his view on that. Rashi and Radak don't necessarily agree with that particular approach. And you'll see now when we start, we're going to start, we'll just go back 2 psukim, and I'll share the screen now. We're in chapter 20. Those of you who are following in your own Tanakh, we're going to start at chapter 20, verse 25. Jeffrey is back from his travels, so he can do the reading. Chapter 20, verse 25, Jeff.
The king sat at his seat, as at other times, at the seat by the wall. Jonathan stood up, and Abner sat at Saul's side, and David's seat was empty.
Let's just stop there, just to remind you, last time we spoke about Wild Bill Hickok syndrome. Bill Hickok was some kind of cowboy figure, and he always sat with his back to the wall because he was frightened of getting shot. Philip Lehrer raised that for us. And this is why Saul was sitting here with his back to the wall, because he was scared that he was going to get stabbed in the back. In the end, by the way, Wild Bill Hickok did get shot in the back. But there you are. So he's sitting by the wall. Jonathan arose. Why did he arise? Because, well, partly I think because the king was sat on his own. It seems that David was meant to be sitting next to the king, which is a bit strange, really, because he's not a son. At best, he is a harpist for the king. And at worst, he's an enemy, because Saul has, of course, tried to capture him on several occasions. Why would David's place be right next to the king, Abenon? I do not know. But it seems that that was the case, that David's seat was next to the king, and therefore it was empty. And it was obviously empty because he wasn't there. If he'd have had a seat at the back, maybe nobody would have noticed that he wasn't there. But his seat seems to be next to Saul. Jonathan gets up to go and sit next to his father, because it's like, it's not covered for the king to be sat on his own. It's like, it's when you have guests, you don't sit them with nobody at the end of the table, with nobody sat next to them. It's rude. So Jonathan got up to go and sit next to his father. And Abner sat down beside Saul. Abner was the general. He obviously also saw that the seat was empty, and he went and sat next to Shaul. David's place was vacant. Okay, verse 26. Yes, Jeffrey.
Sorry to interrupt, but surely David was the general at this time. David had already Goliath had already been slain. And David had also won some other battles subsequent to that, and he was making his mark in the army. And whilst Abner was the general, David also was the general. He had his own band and he did pretty well with it.
I agree, but you'd expect, wouldn't you, the king to have his most trusted people next to him. Why would he put David, who in the earlier part of the chapter, in the previous chapter, he's tried to kill on several occasions. He's chucked a spear at him twice. He's sent messengers to Michal. Michal's let him escape. He sent messengers 3 times. He sent soldiers to go and arrest him when he was with Shmuel. He handed him over to Jonathan's care. Why would he want David next to him? Unless you say that he wanted him next to him to keep his beady eye on him. And I think that's, to me, the most likely explanation that David was next to Saul, because he wanted to keep a close eye on him, and he didn't trust him, because he can't be, because he loved him so much, because he's tried to kill him on several occasions.
It was his son-in-law as well.
He was his son-in-law. That is true. But you'd expect Jonathan really to be next to Saul, wouldn't you?
He was also his personal musician, wasn't he? So
he was his personal musician, but I still find it difficult that David's place is right next to Saul. I would have expected Jonathan to be next to Saul. Yes, Jeffrey.
This is the effects of the schizophrenia that Saul was enveloped in.
Yeah. I think possibly that's true. Possibly that's true, that the poor fellow don't know whether he's coming or going. Yeah. I think but in any event, David's place was vacant, and more importantly, was obviously vacant and had been noticed by Shaul. And the important thing now is verse 26.
Saul said nothing on that day, for he thought, it is a coincidence. He must be impure, for he has not been cleansed. So,
as I said at the end of last week's shiur, not last week, 2 weeks ago, they were eating kodshim here. This was holy food, and you had to be tahor. You had to be ritually pure. Now, there's all sorts of reasons why David might have been ritually impure. He might have touched a creepy crawly, a sheretz. He might have had some kind of seminal emission, and he might have been tamei for some other reason. He might have touched some other tamei sort of vessel or something. And you are tamei in those situations for a day. You have to go wash your clothes, go to the mikveh, and then the next day you are clear again. So Shaul gives him the benefit of the doubt, it seems, on that first day. And now we come to the issue of the second day of Rosh Chodesh.
What were they eating? What were they eating, Johnny, that was holy?
They were eating holy food, kodshim, that would have been from, that you have to be Kodesh, maybe Shvi's food, who knows what it was. But, he had to be tahor to go to the king's table, because otherwise Saul would not have thought, the reason he hasn't come is because he's tamei. So he had to be tahor to come to the king's table. That seems to be the implication here. 27.
It was the day after the new moon, the second day of the month, and David's place was empty. So Saul said to Jonathan, his son, why did the son of Jesse not come to the meal either yesterday or today?
Okay, stop there. What's the problem with that pasuk? Let's just start at the beginning. Read it again from the beginning, Jeffrey.
It was the day after the new moon. Now, it says here, the second, and in brackets, day of the month.
Okay, like it does on the screen, in fact.
So the day of the month has been put in by Art Scroll.
Yeah, so, and it's also been put in here by the Chabad translation. Have you got the screen? Yeah, you have. And
Stein's house also says second day of the month.
Yeah, and so does the Koren. I'm looking in the Koren. It also says the second day of the month. What's the problem with that?
The second day Rosh Chodesh is the first day of the month.
Yes, Correct. In our workings out, the second day of Rosh Chodesh is the first of the month. The first day of Rosh Chodesh is, in fact, the 30th day of the month. So the problem we've got here is this is a translation, by the way, according to Rashi and Radak, that it was the second day of the month, and it was not the first day of the month, it was the second day of the month. What's the problem with it being the second day of the month? Why is that difficult, according to Rashi and Radak's opinion, that this was the second day of the month, apart from the fact that it isn't Rosh Chodesh, or as a consequence of the fact that it isn't Rosh Chodesh? What's the problem?
Still sitting there for 2 days.
Yeah, what's so special about the second day of the month? Why are they having a special party? Why are they having a special meal? So it's a bit difficult. That translation, that interpretation of Rashi and Radak, who say that this means the second of the month, is problematic. The other Mefarshim say, no, this was the second day of Rosh Chodesh. And we know previously that, that they knew there was going to be 2 days Rosh Chodesh. How do we know that? Can you remember? Anybody remember how we know that they knew there was going to be 2 days Rosh Chodesh?
Because the Eidim came late.
No, nothing to do with the Eidim. There weren't Eidim in those days.
Okay.
Let me have a look. Find the pasuk for you. There we go. Have a look at verse 12 on the screen. Jeffrey, verse 12.
Jonathan said to David, I swear by Hashem, the God of Israel, that I will probe my father at this time on the 3rd day from now. And behold, if it is good for David, will I not then send for you and reveal it to you? Such shall Hashem
Stop there, Jeff. Stop there. Now, you said something very interesting there. I shall probe my father at this time on the 3rd day, and you said from now. Right?
And I will probe my father at this time on the 3rd day from now.
From now, right. So this was Erev Rosh Chodesh. So they knew from the fact that it was the 3rd day from now that there was going to be 2 days Rosh Chodesh. Okay, so they knew ahead of time that there was 2 days Rosh Chodesh. Nothing to do with the Eidim, because there weren't Eidim at this time. And that's the argument of Rav Moshe Lichtenstein, is that there was always 2 days Rosh Chodesh. And basically the idea is that the lunar month is 29.5 days, and you can't have a half a day. So the idea is that one of the days of Rosh Chodesh is the day actually of the Molad, of the birth of the new moon, and the other day is the counting of the days. So they knew. The point is they knew. We know that because it wouldn't be on the 3rd day otherwise. He wouldn't know that there was going to be 2 days Rosh Chodesh. So there are 2 days Rosh Chodesh. Let's go back to where we are. And so the 2 days Rosh Chodesh means that it's not the 2nd day of the month. It's the 1st day of the month, because the 30th would have been the 1st day. So this translation and the Art Scrolls translation goes according to Rashi and Radak, which is a little bit problematic, because they wouldn't be necessarily having a special party on the 2nd day. So it's the 2nd day of Rosh Chodesh. Yes, Johnny?
Can I just read what Rabbi Stansel says, that for the continuation of this story, it appears that the new moon would sometimes be celebrated for 2 days, as is the case now.
So he's going according to Rashi and Radak.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really fit to say that it's the second day of the month, because then you're going to say, well, why would you have, if it's the second day of the month, why would you have a Rosh Chodesh party? So it is a complicated issue. And even, if you go according to Rashi and Radak, you've got to explain somehow or other this second day. And that's why the translation in some places is, and it was on the morrow of the new moon, the second, and instead of saying in brackets, the second day of the month, the second day of Rosh Chodesh. Okay? So either way, the point is that it's the second day that David is missing. And he's now noticed it. The first day is given him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was Tameh. And look what he says. Have a look at the language that Shaul uses. Read it again for us, Jeffrey. 27.
It was the day after the new moon, the second day of the month, and David's place was empty. So Saul said to Jonathan, his son, "Why did the son of Jesse not come to the meal either yesterday or today?" Jonathan answered Saul, "David asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem."
Okay, stop there a sec. I just need to interrupt for 1 second, and I will be with you in a minute. Just got to pay the builder. Sorry about the interruption. Right, I'm back. Okay, so look what he says. He says first of all, Saul says to Jonathan, why is Shaul asking Jonathan where David is?
Because it's his mate.
Because it's his mate. Okay, he knows it's his mate. That's true. And another reason. What happened in the previous chapter? Shaul sent 3 lots of messengers to arrest David. Right? And then we see that Shaul goes himself and he becomes a prophet, and he lies down doing all this prophecy business. And remember, he was lying down in his Unterhäusen on the floor. And then the next thing we see is that David's back in the city with Jonathan. And it seems that David was in fact captured, and he was handed over to Jonathan for safekeeping. Jonathan was, because the whole idea of Shaul going to get him was to kill him. So Jonathan was given him to look after. And so he's in the what's the word I'm looking for? He's in the
vicinity,
care, I suppose, or the custody, that's the word. He's in the custody of Jonathan. And so it's reasonable, as well as him being his mate, he's meant to be, making sure that he's there. So Saul says to him, where is he? But look how he says it. Look in the Hebrew. Madua lo ba ben Yishai.
Where's David?
The son of Jesse, right? He uses his surname, right? Which is a very negative way of speaking about somebody. Normally, if you're kindly disposed to somebody, you will either call them Mr. Ben Yishai, or you will call him by his first name. And he's clearly not happy, and he calls him son of Jesse, and that's a negative approach. And how does Jonathan answer him? Verse 28, Jeffrey.
Jonathan answered Saul, "David asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem." He said,
David asked me, yes, so he uses his first name. So it's almost as if he's saying to his father, don't refer to him as Ben Yishai, that's rude. His name is David. David asked me to. It's like stressing that. This was the plan. Of course, we know that this was the plan from previously, that David and Jonathan had worked out this plan of how he was going to find out whether Shaul was badly disposed to David or not. So Shaul's angry and he calls him Ben Yishai. What was this that I've got to here? Here's another example in chapter 22 that we'll come to in a bit, where Shaul uses this expression Ben Yishai in a negative way. If you have a look over here, I've highlighted it on the screen. Saul said to his servants who were standing by him, "Listen now, O Benjamites, will the son of Yishai also give you fields and vineyards?" This was Shaul trying to get the men of Binyamin on his side. And he's saying that Ben Yishai, he's no good. It's like, saying that today's politicians, you would describe, if you were badly disposed to a particular politician, you might call him by his surname, Netanyahu, right? For example, if you were well disposed to him, you may call him Bibi, okay? Because it's a nicer way of saying about it. Now here, Shaul is trying to persuade these Benjaminites, and he calls him all the time Ben Yishai. Look at verse 7, son of Jesse. Verse 8, son of Jesse. Verse 9, son of Jesse. Not once does he give him his name, David. So there's an example of the idea that Ben Yishai is a very negative way of deferring to David. Jonathan's not having anything of it. And he says, no, his name is David. Treat him politely. And he asked me to go. Now, again, that's another example of how we know that Jonathan was meant to be looking after David and was in his David was in his custody. Because if he wanted to go to Bethlehem, who should he really be asking? Shaul. Yeah, he should be asking Shaul. It's Shaul's party. He's the king. He's the one that's made the Rosh Chodesh party. He wants to go to Bethlehem. He should come to Shaul and say, King, do you mind if I go to Bethlehem? But he doesn't. And Jonathan says, David asked leave of me. So it's another hint to us that Jonathan was meant to be making sure that David was where he should be, and David was in his custody. Yes, Jeffrey.
Well, he wouldn't be favorably David would not be favorably received by Shaul, but as he was in Jonathan's custody, it was logical for him to ask Jonathan for permission.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. This is another proof that he was in Jonathan's custody. Because if he wasn't in Jonathan's custody, he's not asking the right person. Because Jonathan's answer, if he wasn't in Jonathan's custody, Jonathan's answer would have had to have been, well, you'll have to ask me dad.
There's no evidence up to now of David's impropriety towards Shaul.
No, David's done nothing wrong to Shaul
He's done nothing wrong. He's been submissive the whole time.
Correct.
To the point of actually losing his life.
Yes, correct. He fears for it, certainly fears for his life, doesn't he? He runs away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can't blame him. He's had a spear chucked at him twice.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is another proof that Jonathan was meant to be looking after David in a captive sort of way. And Jonathan says to Shaul, he asked me to go to Bethlehem. What's in Bethlehem? Why did he want to go to Bethlehem?
It's his father's house.
Yeah, that's right. Verse 29.
Jonathan answered Saul, David asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem. He said, please grant me leave, for we have a family feast offering in the city. And he, my brother, summoned me. So now I have found favor in your eyes. Please let me be excused that I may see my brothers. That is why he did not come to the king's table. Okay,
now you can see that in that translation that you read out, and also on the screen, and you see that there is an inverted commas there in 28. So Jonathan answered Saul, and then you've got inverted commas. David asked leave to me to go, and he said. Now they've got inverted commas within inverted commas, yeah? So the second lot of inverted commas is what Jonathan is reporting to Saul, what David said to Jonathan. He said to me, all of this stuff between let me go away until see my brothers. Let me go away now, for we have a family sacrifice in the city. And he, my brother, commanded me, and now if I found favor in your eyes, let me slip away now and see my brothers. So who has instructed David to go to the family meal?
Well, it's not, it was Jonathan, but he didn't actually instruct him. He just gave him leave.
No, what I'm saying is Jonathan's reportage to Saul is that somebody commanded David to go to Bethlehem. I know it was a lie. It was made up. But according to what Jonathan says to Saul, who commanded David to go back to Bethlehem?
His brother.
His brother, correct. His brother. Now, there is another way of reading this pasuk where the inverted commas are different. Michael Leaf, I hope you're watching this very carefully, because I've had you in mind when I was thinking about this. So this is what how you could punctuate this pasuk. And he said, David said to Jonathan, let me go away now, for we have a family sacrifice in the city, close inverted commas. And he, my brother, commanded me, inverted commas, and now if I found favor in your eyes, let me slip away now and see my brothers. So you would have this bit, and he, my brother, commanded me, not in inverted commas. And if you say that, I think it fits in with our interpretation of verses 27 and 28 very well. 27, Saul is rude about David. He calls him Ben Yishai. Jonathan in verse 28 says, don't call him Ben Yishai, call him by his name, David. Let me go away now, for we have a family sacrifice in the city. Stop. And this is Jonathan speaking to Shaul now. And he, brackets, David, my brother. Is David Jonathan's brother? No, he's not. But
he made a declaration earlier, though.
He does. And more than that, he makes a declaration later. Got it wrong somewhere, where he declares that he is his brother. What's this one here? No, it's over here. Here is Yoav says to Amasai, is all well with you, my brother? Achi means my brother. And now in modern Hebrew, you'll hear people say Achi all the time. Manishma Achi. How things, my brother? It's a term of endearment. So in our pasuk here, I think I've got another one somewhere. Just give me a sec to find it. Where did I find that? Shmuel 29. So yeah, that's that one. Shmuel bet 29 and Malachim Aleph. There's Malachim Aleph. There we go. This was a very interesting story that I came across. Right, here's another example of somebody being called my brother when he's not really his brother. He placed his corpse in his grave and they eulogized him, alas, my brother. He wasn't his brother. This is a very weird story. It's in Malachim Aleph. We'll get to it eventually. Where the king, Ravam, I think it was. Let me see who it was. One of the kings, anyway. Yeravam, that's right, Yeravam. And there's a man of God, we're not told his name. He comes and he gives a whole prophecy. At the end of the day, this guy gets killed, and another prophet buries him, and at his grave, he eulogizes him and he calls him my brother. So it's an example where my brother means somebody very close to me. So the idea here is that you can punctuate this differently and show that Jonathan is here stressing again to the king. Not only is he saying, don't be rude about him, and don't call him Ben Yishai, call him David, it's his name. He is my brother. I consider him to be my brother. My brother commanded me. And he said, now if I found favor in your eyes, let me slip away now and see my brothers. So
David wouldn't command Jonathan, though, would he?
No, that's true, but it's a sort of it's an expression that you do see. It's a good
Rabbi
point.
Steinsaltz actually said this. Let me go. And then it says older brother.
Right. So if you take the simple explanation, which is what's on the screen and what Jeffrey read out and Steinsaltz, then yes, as you all said, it's his brother who's commanding him. The reason that I rather like the other explanation is, and the reason, and this explains why Steinsaltz has put older brother in, is who would you expect David to be commanded by to come to the family meal?
Father.
His father. And so the fact that it's his brother, Steinsaltz has to say it's his older brother. Well, that's actually redundant. Why is it redundant? How do you know that it's redundant that Steinsaltz says older in brackets? How many brothers did David have?
6, I think.
6 or 7, depending on the interpretation they have. Who was the youngest? David. So he hasn't got any younger brothers, has he? So all of his brothers were older brothers. So Rav Steinsaltz does not need to tell us that he was an older brother.
But
what he's doing is
eldest brother.
maybe eldest, maybe. But that's not what it says, is it? It says older.
No.
Right. So I would have a question against that, because I would think it would be his father that would command him to do so. Although you would say, okay, his father told his brother to do it, to go and tell him, fine. But I like the idea that we split this pasuk up, and it's Jonathan referring to David as my brother, because it fits with the previous explanation. I want to point out to you an interesting word here. We might need David Marks's help here. Let's just read the pasuk again for us, Jeffrey, 29.
Johnny, the wind has blown me at my place. What chapter were you on?
Chapter 20. Chapter 20.
Right.
Verse 29.
He said, please grant me leave, for we have a family feast offering in the city. And he, my brother, summoned me. So now, if I have found favor in your eyes, please let me be excused that I may see my brothers. That is why he did not come to the king's table.
Okay, so you said, let me be excused and see my brothers, right? My translation on the screen says, let me slip away now and see my brothers. Okay, what does a Steinsaltz say?
Yeah, the same. Let me get away and I will see my brothers.
Okay, let me get...
And I will run to see my brothers. I will run is in brackets.
Okay, that's important. Let me get away and I will run to see my brothers. What does the Hebrew say? Anything about running? No, nothing about running there. Let's have a look at what the Koren translation is. Let me get away to see my brothers. So we've got excused, be excused, slip away, and run, No, sorry, get away and run and get away. Now, all of those different translations are of this word here in Hebrew. Not so many words there. This one here. Imalta. Imalta. Va'ata, and now, if I found favor in your eyes, imalta, na. Please let me imalate. Mem lamed tet. Where have you had that word in the Torah? And what does it mean in its context in the Torah? Anybody? David?
Comes with Lot and his family fleeing from Sodom.
Yes, exactly. Parshat?
Parshat Vayera.
Very good. There it is. Can't catch you out today. There it is on the screen. It's in Parshat Vayera. You want to read it off the screen for us, Jeffrey? Verse 17.
And it came to pass when they took them outside that he said, flee for your life. Do not look behind you and do not stand in the entire plain. Flee to the mountain, lest you perish.
Stop there. So look at the Hebrew words. When he took them outside, and he said, Himalate. See that word? Himalate. That's our word that we're dealing with in our chapter. Himalate al nafshecha. Flee for your life. Okay? And then it goes, Hahara Himalate. Flee to the mountains. Okay? And we've got it again in verse 19, Jeffrey, on the screen.
Behold, now your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have increased your kindness, which you have done with me to sustain my soul. But I cannot flee to the mountain, lest the evil overtake me and I die.
So Lot says, Lo ochal lehimalet. I'm not able to flee to the mountain. Why not? Why could Lot not flee to the mountain?
But he had an entourage, didn't he? He had a wife and daughters.
Yes, so?
Well, and I suppose he had property as well, so maybe he couldn't get away quick enough.
Yeah, but he's being told to leave everything behind and run. The Mefarshim tell us that Lot was a very wealthy man. That's why he'd chosen to go down to Sodom in the first place, because it was the most fertile place. He was a very wealthy man. And back in those days, what did wealthy men do that poor men couldn't do?
Well, they had livestock.
Yeah, they had they had food.
Yeah.
He was fat. Lot was very overweight, and he says, I can't do it. I can't make it up to the mountain. And so he asks to stop at a place called Tzoar, which is before the mountain, because he says, I can't do it. Lo ochal, I'm not capable. He was very overweight, and he couldn't run away from the destruction of Sodom. Anyway, the point that I wanted to raise is this word here, Himalate, Himalate, Himalate. Okay, and our verse is here, Himalta. I will escape, I will flee. You can see from the story of Lot that the meaning of the word mem lamed tet has an implication of fleeing, of escape. Now, none of the translations that we had for our pasuk really give that impression, except I think the Steinsaltz a bit that says, let me get away and I will run. Yeah, and that's why Steinsaltz puts that extra in, because there's nothing that says the word rats, running, in our pasuk. But because of the word imalta, because of the word which has got connotations of escape, that's why Steinsaltz has translated it as it is. So be excused, which is what the Art Scroll said. A little bit, you could say you've got to ask permission if you're going to run away. You're going to ask permission to escape. Slip away here, and none of them really do it justice. The implication of this word is an escape from a dangerous situation. So there may well be here some kind of Freudian slip going on that Jonathan is telling Shaul that David used this expression of escape. Did David really use this expression of escape? No, this whole conversation never took place. This is a lie. Jonathan is telling Shaul a lie. There was no such discussion between David and Jonathan that said, I want to go to a sacrifice in Bethlehem with my family and I want to run away. It's all made up. But there's a subconscious use of the word imalta here by Jonathan to Saul about David. I think it's I would like to suggest to you, you feel free to disagree because it's entirely my own thoughts. I would like to suggest to you that there is a subconscious implication here that Jonathan is telling Saul that David is running away because you want to kill him. And it's an interesting expression that he uses, imalta, na ve'ere et achi echai. And it also implies, of course, that he was under captivity. He was in the custody of Jonathan. And so he wants to escape that custody and go to Bethlehem. Okay, so this is the test that's going on now. Shaul has said, where's that son of Jesse? Where is he? He's not come. Jonathan tells him this Bobamisa that David wanted to go to his family. And now what Jonathan is interested to see is what is Shaul's response. Is Shaul's response going to be, oh, well, that's all right then. I like that David fellow. When he comes back, send him round. I'd like him to play the harp for me. Or is he going to say, chutzpah, how can he do such a thing and not turn up to my table? I'm going to kill him. And that's what Jonathan wants to know. Remember, Jonathan has got these split loyalties. His friend and his achi, his brother, is David. But his father is Shaul. His father has promised, sworn by Hashem's name, that he will not kill David. Jonathan has every reason to believe and to hope that Shaul's going to answer favorably to David. David knows already. David told Jonathan, am I a dead man walking? He says, there's one step between me and death. Remember that expression? I think it was right at the beginning of our chapter, actually.
Yeah.
There it is, verse 3. There is but a step between me and death. David knows the story. Jonathan is not yet convinced. He's still hoping against all hope that Shaul will keep his promise that he made in an oath with God's name, that he won't kill David. Of course, Jonathan is now going to get a rude awakening because he's not going to get the answer that he wants. The answer that he wanted was to say, oh, well, that's all right then. We'll see him when he gets back from Bethlehem. What happens is very interesting, verse 30.
Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan, and he said to him, son of a pervertedly rebellious woman, do I not know that you choose the son of Jesse to your own shame and the shame of your mother's nakedness? Okay, stop there. So who does Saul get angry with? Not with David, because he's not there. He gets angry with Jonathan. And he says, you idiot, what have you let him go for? And then he uses this very unusual expression. And he says to him, Ben Na'avat Hamardut. Ben, the son of
Na'avat hamardut. What's mardut? If you are mored b'malchut, you are a rebellion against the king. You're a rebel. A mered is a rebellion. This means mardut is the word for rebellion. So you son, now it's translated as you son of a straying woman deserving of punishment. What did you translate it as, Jeffrey?
Son of a pervertedly rebellious woman.
Okay, so you've got the rebellious in there, and navat hamardut. Navat is perverted. Something which is aver means it's evil, it's crooked, it's wrong, it's bad. So you son of a bad, rebellious. Where's the woman bit in Hebrew? Not there. It's assumed by the translators because of this word here, ben, son of. Okay, you are the son of. So what do we say if you want to call somebody a horrible name today? You call them son of a bitch, right?
Yeah.
That's a nasty thing to say. So the person you're being nasty about is the son, right? If you want to be nasty about person X and you call him a son of a bitch, you insult his mother. You don't say you're a dog, you're the son of a bitch, okay? And that is the greatest insult that you can give to somebody is to insult their mother.
Yeah, in Ivrit they say son of a prostitute, actually.
Correct. Ben Zonah, same idea. Ben Zonah, son of a prostitute. So again, the implication is that there is no worse slander that you can say to a person than to insult their mother. All think now about your own lovely mothers, and how would you feel if somebody called them by a horrible name? You would be livid. You would be livid. I remember one of my children beat the living daylights out of somebody because they called his mother a Jamaican whore. And this poor kid was left in a rather awful state by one of my boys who beat the living daylights out of him, and he deserved it as well. But it was something that, and he was not somebody who used to get into fights very much, but this was just something he wasn't prepared to tolerate. So to insult your mother is the biggest insult you can get, and that's why it says ben navat hamardut. But actually, there is another explanation for this. It's not clear really what this really means, because who was Jonathan's mother that Saul has just insulted? Does anybody know who Saul's wife was, Jonathan's mother? David, do you know?
Na'avat.
Ahavat?
Na'avat.
Okay, that was a good guess. A good guess. It's not correct. If you were detectives, you might have noticed on the top of the screen various little tabs here. You might have noticed this one here. Achinoam. Achinoam, which is a really weird name for a girl, if you ask me, because it means Achi,
Brother.
my brother. Noam is pleasant. Funny name for a girl. My brother is pleasant. Anyway, apparently, Achinoam was the daughter of Achimaaz, who became the wife of Shaul, and the mother of his 4 sons and 2 daughters. So the wife of Shaul, the mother of Jonathan, is Achinoam. Now, as far as we know, Achinoam had not done anything bad to Saul. She bore him 4 sons and 2 daughters. We don't see any problems there. So it's a bit harsh, I think, calling Jonathan the son of a whatever, a straying woman deserving of punishment. So there's another way to look at this, and this is in a similar fashion to another expression that we find in the Torah, in Parashat Ki Teitzei, about a rebellious son. What am I referring to?
He should be stoned, isn't it? Take him out of the camp and stone him.
Yes.
Rebellious.
Can you remember what the name of this fellow is called? How he's described?
No.
Ben Sora Umora.
Very good, Avril. Ben Sorer Umoreh. It's in Parashat Ki Teitzei. Ben Sorer Umoreh. Now, when it says Ben Sorer Umoreh, which means a rebellious and gluttonous child, it doesn't mean the son of somebody who is rebellious and gluttonous. It means he himself is that Ben, is that son of this person who is gluttonous and greedy and stealing money to buy wine and meat and all the things that this Ben Sorer and Moreh does. So another explanation of this, which leaves Bo Achinoam out of it, is to say that Saul calls Jonathan, "You rebellious and perverted child." And I like that explanation better, because Achinoam's not done anything wrong. Why would he, other than that there's nothing worse than insulting your mother, Ben Na'avat Hamardut, here Shaul is saying to Jonathan, you are a perverted and rebellious son. And then he says something really interesting. Halo yodati kol bacher ata leven Yishai. He calls him Ben Yishai again. I knew it. Halo yodati. I knew it, he said. I knew it. How many times have we said that when we've wanted not to believe something, and then it happens and you think, I knew it. I knew it. I shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. I knew it. That's what he said. I knew it. You have chosen ki bocher in the present tense. You choose, it says here. I would translate it saying, you are choosing. You are in the process of choosing Ben Yishai, that son of Jesse, leboshtecha, to your shame, uleboshet ervat imecha, and the shame of your mother's nakedness. What's all that about? Mother's nakedness. Why? What's Shaul referring to there? Shame on you, he's saying. You've chosen Jesse. You've chosen the son of Jesse over me, to your shame. Shame on you, and shame on your mother's nakedness. What's the mother's nakedness got to do with it, do you think? Anyone, any ideas?
It's as bad as looking at your mother when she's naked, because
Yeah,
you're not allowed. It's one of the sins that you shouldn't look at the Erevat or something.
Exactly. It's a laning on it's
Yes.
on Achrei Mot. It's a laning on Yom Kippur afternoon. There is nothing more shameful than a son seeing his mother naked. Okay, that is just about the most shameful thing that you can do. And so Shaul is searching around for words that are the most hurtful, the most shameful, the most awful thing you can say to Jonathan. He calls him this Ben Na'avat Mardut, you perverted and rebellious child. I knew it. I knew you'd choose that Ben Yishai over us. Shame on you, as if you had seen your mother's nakedness. That's how much shame you should have on yourself. And it's an expression of disgust. Shaul is absolutely disgusted with Jonathan. He can't find words to express how vile he thinks that Jonathan has been. Why? Because he's let David go, ostensibly let David go to Bethlehem. Let's just, we're out of time, but let's just do the...
With that word Ben there, with that word Ben, Johnny, you say Ben Shmoni, if you have somebody asking your age, you say Ben Shmonim Shana or whatever it says.
Yeah, that's
Ben.
how you say it. I am a son of 80 years. In other words, I have been a son to somebody for 80 years.
Johnny,
Yes.
can I just tell you how Rabbi Irving Jacobs translates this? Or
Yes, please do.
So you quite rightly referred to Acharemot, Parashat Arayot, the forbidden relationships. And he's accusing Jonathan of one of two things. The first thing, by claiming a forbidden relationship, he's saying, you can't be a son of mine. Your mother obviously was born of another father, or you were born of a relationship of mother. Your mother was with another guy, because there's no way I could produce someone like you. Alternatively, and more disturbing, is of course one of the forbidden relationships, and he's already referred to this in the words used before, na'avat, is homosexuality. And here is Shaul accusing Jonathan of having a homosexual relationship with David.
Yeah. The first one I've not heard. That's a very, very nice and clear, and you can very understand that Shaul is saying, well, you're no son of mine. Your mother must have had an affair with somebody, because I couldn't have produced such a dreadful son as you. That's a very, very good explanation. And the second one about the homosexuality, yes, definitely, I've seen that before, and we have alluded to the potential for this David and Jonathan to have had a homosexual relationship previously. I once gave a shiur here on Tikkun Leil Shavuot about David and Jonathan's homosexuality or proposed homosexuality, and I brought all sorts of various different linguistic proofs for it. It didn't go down all that well, I have to say. I was rather chastised for being so bold, but that was about 8 or 10 years ago, before people were used to my heresy. I think probably it wouldn't be quite so shocking if I did it again. But yeah, that's another example of where he could be accusing him of homosexuality. Ki vocher ata ben Yishai. You've chosen this Ben Yishai. Okay, let's just
have the LGBT. We just had the LGBT parade in Yerushalayim on Friday.
Oh, did they? How lovely. Okay, that's nice for them.
But wouldn't Jonathan have been really frightened that Saul in his current state would decide to do him in, because he was such a rebellious individual?
Yes. Just have a quick look at verse 33, Michael. Jeffrey, just read 33 for us. We're skipping.
Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him. Jonathan then realized that his father had decided to kill David. So Jonathan rose from the table. Okay.
So yeah, Shaul tries to kill Jonathan, throws his spear at him. He's not very good at spearing. He's missed David twice, and he misses Jonathan here. But anyway, you're right, Michael. He does try and kill him. We'll stop there because we're out of time. But I think just to finish off, let's just read verse 31, Jeffrey.
For all the days that the son of Jesse is alive on the earth, you and your kingdom will not be established. And now send and bring him to me, for he is deserving of death.
So there it is. He's made no bones about it now. He's saying that you're an idiot, Jonathan, because whilst David is alive, you're never going to be king, meaning that he will take over for you. So don't be an idiot. Go and get him. Bring him to me, and I'm going to kill him. And that's what Shaul's bottom line is. And then we will see what happens next, hopefully next week. Any questions on today's shiur?
It's not a question, it's just a statement. Jonathan was obviously mortally wounded by his father's accusation. And the very same way as one of your sons nearly beat the living daylights out of that chap that made derogatory remarks, Jonathan would have been enraged by what his father had said. But his father was king, and his father is his father. So the only thing that he can do is to retreat.
Yeah, and actually, if you have a look in your book there, just read out the beginning of verse 34 for us.
Jonathan arose from the table enraged. He did not partake of food on that second day of the month, for he was saddened over David, and because his father had humiliated him.
Yeah, so yeah, you're absolutely right. He gets up from the table, he runs away, he's mad as hell, he's fierce in anger because his father had put him to shame. Exactly as you've said, the Pasuk tells us. And we'll go into that next week in more detail.
Thank you very much. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom, not Shabbat Shalom, that was the other day.
Shabbat
Shabbat Tov, how about that one? Yeah, Shabbat Tov.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Thanks,
Bye.
Johnny. Thank you.